Welcome back to the VET S.O.S podcast network. And remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S Lifeline. We're here to help. And today, sitting on the stoop, we're about to get the scoop. We're going to be talking about something that's going to challenge you right where you are. Because too many people are waiting. And you ask, waiting for what? Waiting for permission. Waiting for opportunity. Waiting for someone to hand them the blueprint. But what if the truth is you were never supposed to wait? What if everything you need to change your life is already in your hands? Today's guest, Griffin Brand, author of Bring Your Own Pencil. This is what we're talking about. A message that cuts through the noise and forces one question. Are you taking ownership of your life? Or are you making excuses? That's what I asked myself when I got the book. This conversation is going to be good. It's going to be not comfortable. It was for me. It's not going to be passive. It's going to be a wake-up call. I had to say, Kings, wake up. So if you're ready to stop waiting and ready to start writing your story or rewriting your story, go ahead and go grab your pencil. Have a seat. Because we're going to sit down with my man on the stoop. We're going to get the scoop. So let's get into it. Griff, what's going on, brother? How we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for that, Kings. I had a thought while you were saying that, actually. Would you mind being my alarm clock every morning? I need to wake up to your message, man. I need to wake up to your hype every morning. That's how I got to start my days the right way. Some Kings in my ear. That's what.
Hey, man,
everybody needs a little more of that.
Brother, I got you, man. Because once I got a hold of your book and I shared my journey with you. And when I started to read, I was like, man, you know how many times I broke my pencil? I just snapped it in half. But then, now I got two pencils. Now I can sharpen them. And this story that's being written right now, whoo. So I just want to start off by saying thank you for putting this together and to put it out there for others that's going to come on after this. Because this is historical data. I'm letting you know this, right? And this is going to be historical data to where 5, 10, 20, when we're 80 and 90 years old, Griff, this book is still going to be circulating out there because it's timeless. I read it, it's timeless. But before we start, I got the scoop on you, okay? The audience and the listeners wants to know, what's the scoop on Griff? Let's share a little bit about, because I mean, your story and journey before you got to be an author is phenomenal. So what's the scoop on you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for that. I mean, just that means, like we talked about before we hit the record button, I mean, you saying that tells me that the book is a success. If it spoke to you, if it had any impact on you, if it made your life even 1% better, then no matter how much time we spend on the book, it's all worth it. And the fact that it's out there in the world, it's worth it. So thank you so much for that, Kings. So I went to school, thought I was, similar to you, I've taken a couple pivots in my life, and maybe not to the same degree, maybe they look a little differently, but I went to school and thought that I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to go into the military, have a nice set career path, kind of cushy life. And, that was kind of what was taught to me growing up as well. I saw that as a very set path. And then I get into school. I'm doing the ROTC thing. I'm learning about the Army. I figure out how to tie my boots, blast my boots, figure out what way is north. And I decided I want to do something a little more. I decided through a series of events that I wanted to do the real Army thing. And in fact, my trajectory was I wanted to be a Special Forces Green Beret. I thought those guys were doing what I was meant to do in life. And so one thing led to another. I commissioned, started as a young officer, and my career path didn't quite go as I expected. I was excelling, but I started learning there's some other options out there. And so I decided on going the path of the 75th Ranger Regiment. And I learned that really, and it's I talk about them in the book because they are, in my mind, the epitome of setting the standard, the epitome of what right looks like, and the most lethal proficient fighting force in the world. And so when I learned more about that unit and what they bring to offer, the people there, their selection process, how thoroughly they vet their individuals, I was like, that is an organization that I want to be part of, because if I can achieve that, if I can be part of that, it'll not only make me better, but that's kind of the pinnacle of what good and great looks like. And so, though I was an armor officer, they don't, that MOS is not accepted in the 75th Ranger Regiment. If you look on their website, uh, I, I, I just didn't want to take no as an answer. And I think that's kind of been a theme in my life, as I've been not only a little bit of a come from behind, comeback kind of person, but also finding a way. Yes. I tell people, if there's a wall put in front of me, or an obstacle in front of me, if I can't go over it, around it, dig my way under, I'm going to headbutt that thing down and find my way through it. And so that's kind of the approach that I've taken to a lot of things. Um, and the 75th Ranger Regiment being one of them. I went to selection. I got selected. I get back to my unit in Germany. I know you spent some time in Germany as well.
Yes.
And the armor branch tells me, you can't go. And I was like, well, they already selected me. Like, what do you mean I can't go? Like, Ranger Regiment's already expecting me. They already got me slated for a unit. And armor branch is, well, we don't send armor guys to Ranger Regiment. And lo and behold, the chief of armor branch comes to Germany, gives just a random branch brief, and I corner him when he's there. I'm like, hey, sir, with all due respect, like, I've been selected. I'd like to go to Ranger Regiment and represent armor branch there. And phenomenal guy. He said yes, and so we made it happen. And spent a few years in the Ranger Regiment. Got a couple deployments to Afghanistan. Phenomenal experience. Met some of the most incredible leaders that I've ever even encountered or seen. Seen walk this world. And so just unbelievable experience. And really that informed, along with other Army experiences, that really informed a lot of the lessons that went into this book. Did a couple of years in afterwards in being an ROTC instructor, kind of coming full circle, giving back to the next generation of Army leaders. And then have spent the last few years since getting out of the Army working various private equity roles. So I've kind of, another pivot in life, working in finance roles. And things have been going great since leaving the Army, but learned a lot, and I really attribute a lot of the lessons from this book, a lot of the things that kind of informed the stories that we tell to that time at 75th Ranger Regiment. So very pivotal time there.
Nice. And then you say, you know what? I want to be an author. I want to put this book. You and Dan, I'll put this book together. Bring your own pencil. So what I like to ask all authors before we even start, like, what made you decide that book cover right there? I already shared what the pencil meant to me when I first seen it, but then when I dove into it, I was like, man, that makes sense.
Well, my brother-in-law, Dan Casey, who's my co-author, he and I played football together at Davidson and when we were in college.
Mm-hmm.
He is a big name in the football world. He'll be coaching the NFL imminently. I mean, the guy is an absolute one of the top 0.001% football minds in the world out there.
Mm.
You ask him, who ran this scheme on this date at this team and did the X, Y, and Z wrinkle to it, and he can tell you exactly what play, what team, what date, how they ran. I mean, it's on his brain is just a catalog of everything offensive football, and frankly, the full game of football. And so Dan, we have this idea called permissionless apprenticeship, making someone else your mentor. And so he had made Bill Walsh, the legendary coach of the 49ers in the 80s. He had decided Bill Walsh is going to be one of my mentors. He passed away a decade or plus ago, so we don't have the chance to talk to him in person, but we can read everything that he put out there. We can watch videos of him. And so Dan did a deep dive. Every single thing Bill Walsh had ever written, spoken, every single thing, every philosophy he had for his team, Dan started internalizing that. And so he'd been doing that for a couple of years. And Dan and I were going back and forth talking about some of the Bill Walsh concepts. And I just so happened at the same time that I read This War Takes Care of Itself, which is Bill Walsh's legendary book. Yep. I read Who Says Elephants Can't Dance, which is another great book about the turn of IBM when Lou Gerstner was at the helm, and he kind of turned that big blue, if you will, around. And I noticed there was some uncanny, not only was it similar time frames, like 80s, early 90s timeframes in both scenarios, but their standards, the things that they use to turn around these failing organizations
Mhm.
were eerily similar, like the exact same things. And so Dan and I started pulling that string where we said, it seems like all of the things that we've seen lead to success, my time in the military, my time in the business world, following the military, Dan's time on the football field, all of these things have the exact same recipe for success, the playbook, if you will. And so we started
Yes.
diving into that across all kinds of industries. You know, from the book, we've got stories from innovators, from entrepreneurs, from military leaders, from other sports coaches. It kind of spans the whole gamut. So there's
Yeah.
something for everyone in there, every leader, I think. But they all have the same blueprint. Success looks the same regardless of where it is. And so that's what we wanted
Yes.
to deep dive is what does success look like and how do we draw those parallels and what are the main lessons we want to take away from this standard of performance that Bill Walsh made famous.
And you know the great thing that you incorporated also is your military training, right? Because you talked about the permanent boot camp, right? Life doesn't stop training you, right? But are you paying attention that permanent, like we are in this permanent boot camp, right? What does permanent boot camp mean in real life? Like what's the scoop on that?
Yeah, I think Bill Walsh came up with the concept of similar to establishing a base camp when you're trying to summit Mount Everest or Mount Rainier for those guys that are out
Yeah.
in Fort Lewis, Washington. You got to have a starting point. You got to have kind of a minimum standard from which to reach the summit. And Bill Walsh was famous for you know teams. There's a lot of teams that burn really hot. They might hit a championship, or they
Uh,
might, an artist that has it's a one hit wonder, and then they just disappear. They fade into oblivion after that. But the great teams, the true dynasties, ones that leave a legacy, they establish a permanent base camp from which they can make a summit attempt regularly. And so Bill Walsh wanted to have these standards that gave his team a foothold that
uh,
doesn't waver. And so at any given time, they could be within striking distance of the summit, never falling all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain. And so I think I just talked about this yesterday, actually, to a large group of veterans. I think that base camp or those standards, the minimum standards you have for yourself. For you, you mentioned before this call, you've hit 16,000, 17,000 steps a day. That is your base camp. Like
yeah.
you hit that no matter what, rain or shine, no matter how you're
Non-negotiable.
feeling.
That's a non-negotiable for me, Griff.
100%. Like, I think everyone, those that want to have sustained success, anyone can strike success maybe quickly through some luck, through circumstances, whatever. But if you want to have sustained success over time, you have to have a permanent base camp from which to make those summit attempts. And those minimum standards that you are non-negotiable. No, rain or shine,
Yeah.
you're gonna get up and do that thing because it's the inputs that matter, and then the outputs will take care of themselves.
Yeah, and that's huge because I showed the app to you, so every day I get a hey. So today is my 240th day in a row. I haven't missed a day from this recording of making those steps. So your early experience, right? You went through uh the school, got the tab selection. I know that going through Ranger school is you have to have mental toughness, right? Like it challenged you. What moment forced you to grow up fast? Because I know we like, man, because we see stuff on TV, right? But once you can remember, and remember I said you can watch the movies all day long, but until you actually in the situation, it hits different. So what made you grow up fast? Like, okay, wow, I'm actually in Ranger school and I'm making it through because for the listeners that do not know and for the viewers that do not know, what is the selection? I know the select like if 200 start, maybe 10 to 15 graduates or move on. And then getting selected out the ones who graduate the school. So what's the scoop on that?
I don't know what the current selection rate is for Ranger School nor for the Ranger Regiment, but I can tell you it's not great. um, I'll tell you two stories from Ranger School to start off, and they say everyone either leaves with a tab or a story,
Yeah.
which that maybe is not fair to some because there truly are some wrongs that are done there. But the first one is I was in mountain phase of Ranger School, and you're either a hungry ranger or a tired ranger. Most people are a little bit of both, but you
Mhm.
lean one way or another. I was a hunger ranger, man. Like I was, I was starved there, and I had been going without sleep for most of undergrad college. So I was used to not sleeping, but the lack of food was really getting to me. And in mountain phase, they give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes to eat all your food, and you're burning 20,000, 25,000 calories a day. So you need to get as much as you possibly can.
Right.
And one of my good buddies, and I hate that I did this to him, but one of my good buddies sitting right across from me, every day I knew he wouldn't eat his hash browns. He didn't like hash browns. Everyone there is scarfing out everything they can
Right.
possibly find. Like you've got 3 minutes to do it. You're choking on stuff. You're trying to get as much food down as possible. But I knew he wouldn't eat those hash browns regardless. And I'm like, man, let me get those hash browns. I only got 3 minutes. Like, let me get them. And he looked at me and goes, no, I'm still deciding if I'm going to eat them or not. And meanwhile, we're still shoveling stuff in our face. And I looked at myself after I asked him that, and I was like, what have I become? I was trying to like take food off of my best friend's, one of my best buddies' plates. Like that's not who I am.
Right.
And so that, in amidst the school where you're sleep deprived, you're not thinking well, hormones are all over the place. You're just like stressed. Cortisol is running rampant. And so, things are just really thrown off. I was like, man, I can't lose my humanity in the middle of all this. I still got to be a great person. I still got to be a great buddy. I still got to look out for these guys. And by all means, one of my best friends, I can't be asking for food off his plate before he offers it to me. And so that was kind of a moment where I've taken that and applied it, hopefully well beyond Ranger School, to where no matter what the situation is, no matter how dire the circumstances, I have to maintain my humanity. I have to maintain the quality and character that I want to uphold no matter what. And I want to portray that and, hopefully make that contagious around me so that others maintain the same standard. Second story, if I can give you a second one here real quick.
Please.
Again, everyone leaves with a tab or a story. My story before I graduated was I'd gone straight through the first couple phases. I got into Florida phase, which is the last phase of Ranger School, and they pulled 3 or 4 of us aside at the very beginning of that Florida phase, and they said, however many people were in your class, couple hundred or whatever, you guys have gotten all goes. You've passed all of your lanes so far on the first try. And so whichever one of you has the best round here in Florida is going to get honor grad for the school. And so I was like flying high. I was like, all I got to do is crush Florida phase, get a go on this lane and get out of this school. And I'm sailing through the rest of my, what's next for my career. And I had my lane. I thought I did really well. Everything was going quite well, and we finished the lane and had the debrief with the ranger instructor, and I could tell something was a little bit off, but I couldn't tell what it was. And the thing is, when you're security squad leader, not to get too into the details here, but when you're security squad leader, it's the only platoon position that's evaluated. There's 2 Ranger students evaluated by 1 Ranger instructor. All the rest are one-on-one evaluations. And so when we get to the end of that phase, I'd only gotten one lane look, so I thought I was good to go. If you get one and you're done, then that means you passed, and you don't need a second one to try and still pass. And so I was like set, graduating, packing up, going to wrap my wife, tell them I'm coming home soon. And then they list out all the recycles, and my name was on the list. They said I didn't pass. And lo and behold, and in fact, I learned this because I talked to the Ranger instructor afterwards. He had mixed up my evaluation with the other security squad leader's evaluation. So the only evaluator that had 2 people to grade, he had flipped our evaluations. That other kid had not performed well. People didn't think he should pass. I thought I had crushed it, and a lot of people thought the same. But though I performed well, I still recycled. I had another month in the swamps, another month away from my wife. And that was a very trying moment. You asked about those moments that are kind of pivotal in how you approach, things going forward in life. And that was certainly one of them where it hit my pride. It was the first real thing that I had kind of failed in my life, or at least, my evaluation was a fail. And it made me really rethink, like, anything can happen. It's all about how you respond to it. It's all about, to your point, my pencil's been broken. How do I respond to this? How do I show up with a fresh pencil to get back at it tomorrow? I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna wallow in this. I need to attack this next Florida phase, or else I'm gonna be going home
Right.
without a tab. I'm gonna be that story guy that doesn't even have a tab and has gone through all this for nothing. So, um, sorry to dump two stories on you, but
No,
those are
that's good.
both instrumental to my kind of very early shaping days in the Army.
So, and that's why I see, right? Some people, they want comfort. Some want chose growth, right? Because that's what you chose. Look, I'm ready to grow. Like, what do you mean I didn't make it? Which one costs more in the long run? What you think? Wanting comfort or choosing growth?
Um, which one cost me more?
Yeah.
I think, I think choosing comfort always costs more in the long. Choosing the growth path is never the easy. I mean, it's never going to be an easy option. Growth,
Mm,
natural, just like lifting weights. Like you're
right.
tearing muscle fibers. You're tearing maybe bad habits. You're tearing patterns that
Mm,
maybe are not comfortable. But that's what's
right.
required to hit growth. And so there's going to be a tear. There's going to be some pain, regardless of what that growth looks like. Um, and I think the military at large is just great at teaching us to choose the harder right, choosing the
Yeah.
pain, because in a lot of ways we don't have a choice.
Mm,
The military is just going to give you pain regardless.
all right.
But I think it really positions us well, regardless of what we do after our time in the service, because we're used to dealing with stuff that others aren't. We're used to going where others won't and showing up no matter what, bringing our pencil and getting after it and making the best of the situation and making ourselves better and others along the way.
Yeah, and I started checking because when I was reading the book, I came to the section where you talk about radios, right? You talk about the UHMV, and one have direct sight, the other one you have to go high up on the mountain, the other one has to clarity, right? Communication, execution under pressure, military radios. Now, what made you put that portion in there? It's like a lead in to the next chapter. You talk about military radios and then I didn't realize, like, when I started thinking about it, I was like, there is a difference between BH and UH. Like, a certain way is line of sight, like you have to be seeing, and the other way you have to have it dialed in. So what's the scoop on that when you put that in a book?
Yeah, so I had this thought at some point that the best leaders are those that can simultaneously, or at least can alternate between being 30,000 feet in the air, seeing the big picture, having strategic vision, being able to see where the organization is going, while also being able to, in the snap of a finger, go into the weeds, get their hands dirty, understand the minutia of what's going on, really understand the implications of decisions on the ground, and make decisions accordingly. And so those that can oscillate between the two, like an HF radio, HF radio,
Yeah.
for those listening that I'm not a commo guy, so don't fact
Yeah.
check me on this, but the radio waves oscillate between the ionosphere and the surface of the earth. And so HF radio, these long waves that are bouncing off the ionosphere back to the earth can travel a long distance. I mean, they have radio competitions for a handheld HF radio to talk from Seattle to China,
Right.
halfway across the world. And I think that really is indicative of every great leader. They've got to be able to travel far, see a long distance, while also going back down to the ground level and getting their hands dirty so that they can make decisions that are accurate with the front line of what's going on. Um, so I don't know when I originally had that idea, but I do think that it's not an intuitive thing. Some people are naturally micromanagers, maybe, or
Uh,
maybe they just love the nitty gritty details. And then other people are more strategic level. And I think it takes realizing where you fall on that spectrum, which one of those people you are, and then learning to dive
mm,
into both if you need to. If you're really in a leadership position, I do think it calls for being able to do both, to both see above the clouds where things are going, while also getting down on on your hands and knees and low crawling through some dirt.
right. But what happens when communication breaks down?
Yeah,
That's a hard
y-
one.
that's right.
That's a
That's a
hard
hard
one.
one.
What happens when communication breaks down, Griff? I mean, we talk about clarity, we talk about communication, executing under pressure. But it's like, when we was younger, right? We played I guess, the telephone game, right? You start off with one thing and the next thing comes back around. Like, hold on. People add stuff, take stuff away. And like, well, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. Is that, miscommunication. So in the book, how can you what can you recommend somebody do? Like, man, what happens when communication breaks down? How do they dial back in that frequency so they can have direct communication?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think if you're truly a leader that's getting into the weeds,
Mm,
who's down on the ground level, I think that's what's required to reestablish communication. You
mm,
know, um, if the leader is not able to come down from that 30,000-foot view, they're not able to see where the breakage in communication happened. To continue on the military radio analogy, maybe there's something wrong with the antenna. Maybe there's something wrong with the
mm,
orientation of the antenna. HF radios, and I mentioned this in the book as well, those radios require a little bit more expertise by the user, a little bit more tuning and proper orientation of things in order to, an a VHF radio that's line of sight. It's literally, you gotta make sure you got a battery in there, right
yeah,
frequency, pop up that long whip antenna, and you're talking. Like, it's
yeah,
pretty straightforward. Um, but I do think you've got to be able to get back onto the ground level and find where that communicate break of communication is. And also, we mentioned in the book, we've got a section on the right people, and if you have the right
mm,
people in an organization, then as cliche as it sounds, you get the right people on the bus. To use the Jim Collins analogy,
right,
communication, when it does break down, you've got leaders that are at the front line of what's going on that can restore things and take initiative and
mm.
make decisions within your the kind of the commander's intent, if you will. And so a lot of that goes back to having the right people in the organization and having a leader that is tied in with what's going on.
And definitely, if your message isn't clear, the mission fails. Like, period. Like, if you're not sending out that clear message, the mission's not gonna be successful.
I'm sure you've heard the name Stanley McChrystal before, right?
Oh yes.
So I love General McChrystal is one of my favorite figures in recent military history. He was very kind and wrote us a blurb for the cover of the book.
Hmm.
And I have a chapter in there talking about General McChrystal's command at JSOC when he created the fast and flat mentality. It's one of my favorite concepts out there. And two things that he did that are really unique, especially for at his time, 3-star general. It's easy for them to stay at 30,000 feet. It's like
Right.
they could be up there. They got a lot of people working for them, a lot of control. They got to see a lot. But he had a way of doing both, of both being at that strategic level, but also getting his hands dirty. One thing he would do, he would
Mm.
physically call junior leaders on their cell phone in country
Oh
to
wow.
see what they were seeing on the front lines. I mean, he would call a lieutenant who was a platoon leader. He would call captain company commanders. He would even call senior NCOs who were squad leaders of platoon sergeants and say, "Hey, what are you seeing? What are we
Mm.
missing here? How do we better exploit this network that we're working on?" And that was incredibly unique. I mean, that's a perfect example of going from 30,000 strategic view down to exactly what's going on the cutting edge of operations in country.
Right.
And so I think he's a great example of that. His fast and flat mentality is something that I think everybody should study, and it's one of the core concepts in our book for a good reason.
Yeah, and I like what you put in inside of chapter 2. Talk about self belief, right? Before the evidence, right? You have to, like, I had to believe in myself, Griff, that I could get out there and walk those steps, right? Before it even, you have to get into that mindset. How do you believe in something you can't prove yet? Like, what did it feel like early on when you had to sit down and write? Because for me, writing a book, I get nervous. Like, I'm getting goosebumps right now, even think about me being an author, right? Like, what was the stage like? You know what? I'm gonna put this book together. After you successful in the military, honorable discharge, you incorporate doing your thing, and then now, like, it's time to do a book.
Oh, the first thing I'll say is find a great partner because I absolutely could not have done this without my incredible co-author Dan. Um, we wrote this book because it's the book that we wanted to read. It's
Mm,
it's things that we've been discussing for years, ideas that we've had for a long time, but we just couldn't find it out there in another form. And so we're like, if this is what we want to read, let's just write it ourselves and put it into. So we reference the book probably more than any. I mean, it's literally our own reference guide as we go about scenarios
right.
and experience things in life because now we just have it all consolidated in one spot for ourselves to reference, and hopefully it's equally as helpful for others. But I think you're hitting on the self belief before evidence part, which I think is incredibly important. One of my favorite stories of all time is James Dyson, who's in that chapter. And everyone knows the Dyson vacuum cleaner is
Dyson vacuum, yes.
sitting in pretty much every home today. And most like hand dryers and bathrooms and everything is Dyson these days. But that dude, if you don't know his story, I mean, that dude did so many experiments. He personally mortgaged his house. He was almost $1 million in debt in his 40s before he ever had any success. I mean, he is the pinnacle, the absolute epitome of having self-belief before. He knew that it was in him. He had the belief that James Dyson is going to be successful when there was absolutely no external evidence to prove that. He then, after trying, they did like a hovercraft boat that he was doing with another inventor. He tried to make an alternative to the wheelbarrow called the ball barrow. I mean, he had some amazing ideas that just nothing hit. And then finally he lands on the cyclone for the vacuum. He had seen like sawmills that are able to extract all of the fine particle sawdust using a cyclone pattern. And so he had seen that, and his thought was, well, the Hoover vacuum hasn't innovated in 100 years. The bags clog all the time because it's a stupid design. I mean, it's filtering out the air, but the bags don't last long. So there's got to be a better way of doing it. And that cyclone method has to work. And so, he steps into his backyard shed with just him and a bunch of parts and starts building prototypes. And 5,127 prototypes later, he lands on the functioning Dyson vacuum that makes him a billionaire. But I mean, imagine the self-belief that he had to have for years iterating on the vacuum. Years before that, iterating on other projects that didn't pan out. And in his 40s, mountain of debt, mortgage his own house, putting his family on the line, he finally makes it. But I think that self-belief is, if you can't believe in yourself, as we talked about before we hit record, it's so much harder. It's practically impossible for anyone else to believe in you. If Kingsley wasn't going out and doing 16,000, 17,000 steps a day, who else is going to believe that you're able to turn your life around and make your life better? So I think that's such an important concept. And I just love the James Dyson story because the guy is an absolute maniac, but now he's super billionaire and it worked out.
And then one thing I like, man, if you wait for validation, it's like danger, right? You're waiting to be validated. Like, how does that delay growth, right? Because imagine if he was waiting and he's like, well, I'm just gonna wait on this one thing. I'm just gonna wait on this. No, but like you say, he tried this, he went to that. It's like, I'm not waiting for validation. I'm keep on going until it catches. Just like you, like you're not waiting for validation. You even said it earlier. Like, I'm gonna go and ask, like, hey, I made selection. How do I get over there? Oh, well, I'm gonna pick up the phone. I'm gonna call somebody, right? Like, you're not waiting because you know that waiting it delays your growth. What's the scoop on that?
There's nothing passive about achieving excellence or achieving where you want to go, frankly. Every step of the way has to be a deliberate decision, deliberate act to get one step closer. And it's cliche, but it's like it's eating the elephant, one bite at a time. A lot of people see this massive mountain in front of them, and they're like, "How could I possibly climb that? How could I possibly even get to base camp to be able to try to get to the summit?" I would offer them, like, first, it requires one step, but it requires constant iteration. And another concept we talk about in the book is not quitting early, not quitting your hit show, not quitting early. So many people quit something when they're right on the verge of breakthrough and they're right on the verge of success. I think the vast majority of those that don't achieve what they want are a lot closer than they think they are. And so, I'm a man of faith, and I love the story of Jericho, where they march around the wall for 6 days straight. 6 days, they're getting stuff is thrown at them. They're getting ridiculed. There's probably some horrible things that are being done that are not appropriate to speak on this podcast. And on the 7th day, the wall comes down. But imagine if they had stopped on day 6.
Down,
literally nothing happens. But you got to take that next step. You got to make it to 7 to see the breakthrough. And I think most people are on day 6. They've been walking for years and years around this wall, just doing a circle, and they haven't seen any progress. And it's demoralizing. But you can't stop on 6. You got to make it to 7, and then the breakthrough happens.
Right. And that's where you talked about it in the Valley of Death, right? The space where you just said it, the space where most people quit. So my question to you that I want to get the scoop on this, like what was your Valley of Death in your journey?
Mm.
What did it feel like in real time?
Yeah. To be completely transparent with you, I don't know that I've even entered my true valley of death yet. I've had many
Mm,
valleys, and I think when we look, I don't want to get too existential here, but I think if we look at
yeah,
our life on a shorter timeline, it's easy to see something as a big valley. Like compared to what's on the left and right of it, it might
right.
look like a bigger valley. So like my setback in Ranger School at that time, that felt like a valley. When I
Mm,
zoom out, here I am, what, 10 plus years after that,
mm,
I see that was not so much of a valley. I think, maybe my life is just there's more perspective now or what, but uh, I think that my biggest valley is yet to come because I'm still going chasing bigger and better things. And so
mm,
I don't even know that I've truly faced, and maybe I'm also just lucky in that regard. I haven't truly faced a valley of death that I need to climb my way out of. But um, I think for everyone, they probably have a series of valleys, and some of them are a lot deeper than others. And some of them take a lot more of you to find your way out and a lot longer.
mm.
Um, but I know from hearing
Yeah.
your story, you've certainly entered quite a few valleys, and incredibly impressive the way that you've climbed out and attacked the mountain on the other side.
Yeah. When I got to that chapter, Griff, I was like, man, what's my value? And you said it, you just said it like at that time, I was in the deepest of valleys. But now I'm years removed from it. I'm like, man, okay, it wasn't that deep, but at that moment, for me, it was.
That's right.
Now that I have more tools, the whole cliche, I have more tools in my toolbox. Because before I'm trying to use a tool that wasn't meant for that right there. And that's why it probably was so overwhelming for me. When I shared with somebody that I was X amount of pounds, I said, man, I'm gonna lose X amount of weight. You know what? They laughed. They said, no. But that was my death valley right there.
That's right. When you're in the valley, it feels a lot deeper, to your
Yes.
point. And the shadows seem a lot darker because that
Yes.
other side of the valley that you need to climb out of is looming right over your head. And you're very much in the shadow of what you have to accomplish. And it feels insurmountable most of the time.
And that goes right into don't quit a hit show, right? Like you said, man, you're just about to break. Stay the course. That's what I was reading your book. I was like, man, if I did not stay the course, I would not be here talking to you right now. I would not be breathing right now. Me. Don't quit a hit show because you might be closer than you think.
That's exactly right. You know, Bill Walsh, the legendary coach of the 49ers, who's really the centerpiece of our book,
Mm,
it took him 25 years just to get a head coaching job with NFL. Like literally
yes.
that's the peak that he was chasing. 25 years. He was 47 when he finally got the shot. But he was just entering his own valley of death at that point because he still had
Mm,
several years to bring the worst franchise in the NFL to turn them around into a dynasty.
right.
And he ultimately did it.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you read his writing, when you read The Score Takes Care of Itself, or the book The Genius, which is another great one about Bill Walsh, you see so many times he was on the verge of quitting. Like he was right about to stop
Mhm,
on six. He was so close to leaving his dream coaching job before he ever saw any success. But then that third year, they won a Super Bowl. They put the right pieces in place. The standards that he brought to the table that he really instilled in the organization started clicking. And
mm.
the rest is history. They won 3 Super Bowls and that decade that he was the head coach. And it was, one of the best NFL dynasties of all time. But then, to your point, he quit his hit show. Bill Walsh, after 10 years, he walked away. And it was because he was burned out. He hadn't taken any
Mm,
sort of sabbaticals or rests. He was not great at delegating or letting other people take some of the burden of leadership for him. And so I think, part of not quitting your hit show is having the stamina to persevere through things, but it's
mm,
also having the self-awareness to know when you need a break, to know when you need a
mm.
mini sabbatical to kind of
Right.
recharge and reattack the next season of life. And a lot of people know how to grind hard. And some people, especially coming from the military background, can grind hard for a long time.
Mm,
And that's an admirable trait. Like pushing hard is, I think, important to achieve success. But no matter how strong you are, at some point, you're not going to have enough strength to keep pushing. And so you got to know
yeah.
enough about yourself, enough about what you're going through, enough about what's ahead of you and where you want to go to take a step back when you need to and
Mm,
give yourself a shot to keep going.
right. What was one? If I had to do it, I know definitely you had to do it because you pushed through and put this together. What was something you almost walked away from but didn't?
That's a really good question. I will tell you one of the things I love about business partnerships, or
Mm,
one of the most best piece of advice that I've heard is you can each want to quit, but just not on the same day. It can
right.
never be the same.
That makes sense.
You can
Yes.
never agree on quitting. Like one of you has
Yes.
always got to be in the fight. And so my co-author and I, each of us alternatively have had many moments where we're working full-time jobs, we have young kids, we're building life, we got a lot of other things going on. Each of us have other kind of business ventures that we're working on, and then we're trying to write this book. And so
Right.
there's a lot of nights and a lot of weekends of writing the book, coming up with all of it from scratch. I mean, it certainly was a process, and there were a number of times where I was like, I don't know if we're going to get this thing to the finish line, but he was very much in it. He's like, no, we got this. And there were plenty of
Yeah.
times where Dan would come to me and was like, I don't know if we can get this thing to the finish line. I was like, no, we got this. And so as
We
long as it's not
already
the
in. Yeah.
same day that you both want to quit, you can keep on pushing. And so that's one of the great powers of having a tremendous partner is, you can have your downtimes,
Right.
but you got somebody there to lift you back up.
And that's definitely trusting the process, right? And like you mentioned, pottery class, right? Like repetition, refinement, patient. I did a pottery class a couple of years ago. I didn't realize how patient you have to be, right? Because you're molding something that's wet. You have to be very refined. You trying to make the lip. You trying to make sure that it's somewhat even. Repetition. Got to make sure the wheel is spinning at a certain speed. How do you like when you put that in the book pottery class? That's when I read that. That's what I thought of. Like, man, you have to have patience. You forming something and it takes time. Like when you on a pottery wheel, is you're moving it, you're shaping it, you're letting it dry, you're adding water, you're you know what I'm saying. It's an ongoing process, and that's part of bringing your own pencil to like everything I
Mhm.
see. I was like, wow. It likes the way how it connects. I was just like blown away, like, wow, this makes sense.
It's all about getting the reps in, right? I mean, how many
Mm.
times, let's just use the battle drill of entering and clearing a
Mm.
room. How many times a does an infantry guy do that and mess it up? I mean, it's all about reps, and it's all about continually iterating and getting better every step of the way. And so that's really the point behind that metaphor of the pottery classes.
Mm.
There are the two groups. One group is told that they're graded off of quantity. One group is told they're graded purely off of quality of what they produce by the end of the semester. And you would think the quality group would win, right? But the quantity group is the one that produces the better pots because they've been iterating. They've been
Over
working
and
throughout the
over,
semester.
yeah.
They've messed up so many times that they've learned infinitely more than the group
Mm.
that's just trying to make one perfect pot.
Yes.
And so I think about that all the time. I mean, the first version of this book, I was embarrassed to read it myself. I wouldn't even
Mm.
dream of letting anybody else read it. But and I wish I don't have it stacked here behind me, but I have a stack of all the different manuscripts that we wrote, like all the different rounds of editing, all the different author
Mm.
copies of the book that we've ordered because we've made continual refinements along the way. And so as we've iterated, as we've continually to hopefully make the book better, you know, it's just gotten a little bit better each step of the way, and we've made a lot of pots that really suck. But hopefully we got to one that's pretty dang good and can make a difference for people. And it just takes that iteration process, being okay with putting something out there that's not 100%. I love the military maxim of, a 60% solution today is better than a 100% solution too late. It's better to
Right.
just put something in action that's acceptable and continue to iterate and improve upon it than to try and make a perfect solution, a perfect decision that doesn't come in a timely fashion. I think that
Yeah.
applies to a lot of people too. A lot of people are trying to make the perfect decision for what their next step is after the military, or the perfect job placement. Um,
Yeah.
and I think
You
it
just
just
have
a
to
lot of it
go
is, yeah, make a step. If it's not the right thing, you can make another
pivot.
step. That's
Yeah.
right.
Just feel, well, this ain't work. Let me try something else instead of there, like, you're hesitating, right? Like, oh man, how do I do this and that? Like, man, just move. And then once you get there, like, okay, well, it's not you. Let's say, one of my questions, like, how do you stay sharp, right? Like, what's your routine? Because I know, as the military community, veteran community, and you take what you've learned and grown in this atmosphere and then move it to the next phase. How do you stay sharp? What's your routine? Like what for me? I get up. I gotta have my lukewarm water with pinch of salt
Mhm.
and some key lime to get the internals going, right? So I
Now
could
we're
get up
talking.
and move. Right, right, right. So I'm alkaline the body so I could make sure that I'm ready to lock in. So what's your routine?
Yeah. Well, quick finish my thought. Your last question. I think I've made so many decisions since leaving the military that have informed what I don't want, and I think
Ah,
that's just as important as finding out what you do want in life. Because when you can eliminate things that you don't want or maybe aren't a fit for you, it just helps you get further and further towards the azimuth that is right for you. And so,
right.
to your point, take a step. You can pivot as long as you've learned something. If you've learned what you don't want, you've learned more about what direction you're headed. I think it's worthwhile. Um, my routine, man, I had I'm a pretty, I think I'm a naturally fairly systems oriented, disciplined person, and we've got a young toddler in our house he is a master of keeping us on our toes. I'll say that. So my routine over the last couple of years has not looked exactly like I would like it to, but we find ways to do
Mm,
the important things regardless. To if it looks like me doing a bunch of push-ups with him sitting on my back, or with him
right.
crawling around me, like that's what I make happen. But you know, my goal is, to your point, to wake up, drink a large glass of water, try and read at least 20 pages a day of a book. I try and read a chapter of the Bible when I'm able
Mm,
to. I get a light blood flow workout, which typically looks like a lot of body weight stuff,
yeah.
and that's kind of how I get charged for my day. I try and keep up with our
Yeah.
toddler, give him some breakfast, appease the beast, and
Yeah.
then get him going in his day. And then I try and I think my life kind of happens in seasons, like most people's do, and so it looks a little bit different, but whether it's training for some any sort of physical event, or whether I'm making some sort of big presentation at work, whatever that looks like, I try and go deep in whatever I'm doing. And
Mm,
another concept we have from the book is called being the expert, and it's really personal to me because one of the stories in there is a story from the Ranger Regiment, and it's one
yeah.
that has not been written about before. Frankly, there's an article by the Army written about it, but I think our book is the first place that really wrote the full story. And it's a story of what excellence really looks like, how you become the expert in your
Right.
craft, how you master your profession. And the story is about, I won't do the full thing unless you want me to deep dive it, but the story is really about the Ranger
Mm,
medics and how they give a blood transfusion for the first time in combat to save lives. So I take that story really to heart, because no matter what I do, no matter what I think anyone does, I think it's important to go as deep as possible to become the expert, to master your
mm,
craft, and whatever that takes. And I think the most important ingredient in that is insatiable curiosity, to, no
yes.
matter what, ask another why, go one step deeper, and just keep on
Yes.
pulling the thread to keep on going deeper. Whether that's reading, asking questions, having conversations with smart people. I mean, I get better every day by talking to people like you, Kings, and other
Mm,
veterans that are transitioning or have been in the civilian world for a while. and just asking people questions about how they think about things. I do read a lot. I love reading, which is why there's so many books. I think we had over 50
Yeah.
plus books that were part of building this
Right.
our book. So that is a big part of it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. My routine has changed quite a bit since kids entered the picture.
Right. No, and that's good. I love how you put the references in the book about that y'all reference other books, right? So it's like a nice web, right? And it comes down to, once again, you have it in the book. The people, you have to reach people at all levels, at all walks of life. And then you talk about the fire and forget, right? The
Hmm.
javelin, right? Right. We have that trust, delegation, empowerment. Like that is what it's all about. So what does trust looks like in leadership? Because I know, as a leader, once you have your troops, your subordinates, your employees believe in you, trust you, you could get more out of that. Even if it's 2 to 5 people, those 2 to 5 people will produce more than 100 people that's not doing anything, that doesn't trust the leadership.
That's right. I think Stanley McChrystal talks about it a lot. There's plenty of other very impressive leaders that talk about the speed of trust.
Mhm.
Really, and one of my a guy that I look up to a lot, who I've worked for in the past, he says trust is the grease that makes the machine go fast, the machine move quickly, and trust is really what allows the rest of success to happen. It's the way that you can communicate within a team, maybe without directly communicating oftentimes. It's the way that you can make a decision knowing that it's supported by your senior leadership, or maybe make a decision that your subordinates are gonna back up and make happen. And so I do think, to your point, and maybe it's cliche, but trust is the most important ingredient to a successful organization. And you talk about that fire and forget analogy. I do love that one because I personally shot a TOW and a javelin, and so I like
Yeah.
have felt the difference of both of those weapon systems. And for those that maybe aren't familiar with those missiles, the TOW is wire guided, so you shoot it, you got to keep the crosshairs on the target all the way until impact, which obviously
Yes.
exposes you to potential enemy fire. It's a lot. It opens up the possibility of user error. If you move the crosshairs, you miss the target. However, with the javelin, you lock on, you fire it, and you
Forget
forget.
it.
You go get
Yeah.
some cover.
Yeah.
You get behind some dirt. And I think that's exactly what trust is. It's being able to send somebody in a direction, give them a task, and know that they're going to accomplish
Mm.
it. Know that they're going to hit the target, even without you guiding them all the way along the trajectory. And so,
Yeah.
I just, ever since I shot those weapons, I was like, I got to talk about this because it's so applicable to any organization. If you have people that
Yes.
you have to guide all the way to the target impact, you're never going to be successful because it's taking up
Right.
the leadership's time, and frankly, there's no trust there. But if you have the
Right.
right people on the bus, you can point them in a direction, send them
Fire
off,
and
and
forget.
they're gonna accomplish the task. You can forget about it.
And that's so the chapter that I love is the one that you talked about earlier, Jeremy Crystal, the fast and flat. Speed, simplicity, like just make it simple. KISS,
Yeah.
right? The KISS method, right? Just down to execute. Like, what does fast and flat? I know what Jeremy Chris said, but for you, for Griff, what does fast and flat mean in execution for you and your daily journey?
Yeah, I think fast and flat is really important as organizations scale. And
Mhm.
I've been part of an organization that has gone from, you know, feeling like a startup into really a corporate, much larger organization, and it requires making a lot more hires. It requires more
Mm.
hierarchy. Eventually, you've got people reporting to people who report to people, and
Right.
very quickly, you've got a hierarchical system that looks like a silo, and you don't have a lot of flat communications where the top person is communicating to the person who's at the edge or at the decision making point. And so, for me, I think that looks like it goes back to that HF radio analogy. If you're a leader, you've got to have a direct way to influence those that are at the edge of decision making. You've got to be able to flatten the organization so that there's not multiple layers of reporting. There's not that game of telephone that you mentioned where somebody who's making a decision says something that passes all the way up, and by the time the leader hears it, it's like a completely different phrase. And so
Right.
that's what it means to me. It means, uh, for one, it's the leader having the creating the structure that is flat enough to where they can keep a pulse on what's going on, but also those people that are at the edge of the decision, uh, feeling like they have that open line of communication and being trustworthy and being a javelin missile who is accomplishing things, but also informing the senior leadership. So, um, I think it's critical. I mean, that's the only way that we were successful in the war on terrorism, to any
Right.
degree, is because we flattened our organization. We had amazing leaders like Stanley McChrystal calling frontline leaders to get a pulse of what was going on the ground. Because otherwise, you create a silo, and
Right.
silos don't work because all of a sudden there's no lateral communication, there's no sharing, and that doesn't lead to success.
And doesn't lead to success. You know what does lead to success though? The go I call it the golden rule. One of my golden rules is what you put in chapter 10, right? Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. I like how you tied everything together, and that was the chapter that ties this thing together by bring your own pencil. Do unto others.
There's a lot of high achievers out there, but what is it for if you don't create other leaders, if you don't create other
Mm,
success? I think, the best we made it's a line that we use in the book, but the true measure of success is how many people thank you for theirs. So it's not how much you achieve, but it's how many other people achieve for themselves, can create their own legacy, build their own family, build their own careers, and then continue to pass it forward. Um, Bill Walsh is a phenomenal example because his coaching tree in the NFL is one of the most prolific in history. I mean, you look at guys like Mike Holmgren, John Gruden, even Andy
mm,
Reid. I mean, just legends in the NFL coaching world who all learned and came from the Bill Walsh coaching tree. And I think that's the true measure of a successful career, is that there's others that have success after you. There's plenty of coaches out there that they have their own personal success, but nobody has come behind them and had their success because they were either a micromanager or they were truly just not a great person. They weren't a teacher at heart. I think every great leader is a teacher first and foremost. Bill Walsh had
wow.
his players called him Bill because he didn't want to seem like he was on a pedestal above them, and he saw himself as a teacher, not a coach. John Wooden was the exact same. Both of them viewed themselves as teacher first, coach second. And I think you see that same trend. Every great leader loves teaching those that are coming after them so they can go above and beyond. The great leader makes their
Mm,
ceiling their people's floor so that they can just take the great momentum, all the things you've learned, and then go above and beyond it.
right.
And it takes humility, right?
Yes, man. When I was brother, when I was going through your book, I had my pencil. It's a new age pencil. I had it's like a eraser, a pen that's a erase. Like the eraser pens.
Oh
Because
yeah.
for some reason I say, man, why I don't have any pencils? But the closest thing I got was a erasable pen, right? Um, and I just started to write down some stuff that aligned with me and your book and what I shared with you earlier. So I'm going to share with the audience, with the listeners. These are the things I've jotted down when I was going through the book, and I shared with Grant. I said, "Man, this book is me writing my story with the two broken pencils." Remember, I said I broke that thing, but I was like, "Man, I need to sharpen it so now I could write this story." No one is coming to hand you the answers. Bring your own pencil and start writing. Excuses feel comfortable in the moment, but they cost you everything in the long run. Waiting doesn't create opportunity, execution does. Your life changes the moment you stop blaming and start building. You don't need permission to improve your life. you need discipline. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled with ownership. Most people aren't stuck. They're just unwilling to take responsibility. You can rewrite your past, but you can absolutely write your next chapter. Motivation fades, standards don't. And if you don't take control of your story, someone else will write it for you. And Griff, that's when I went through the book and I was lining up with my life journey, that's what came to my mind. So
Thank you
I
for
just
that.
want to
That's awesome.
say thank you. And I truly thank you.
Thank you, Kings. That means a lot. I think if people take one thing away from this conversation or reading the book, it's, when they wake up tomorrow or the next day, it's like, what standard am I going to hold myself to? What am I going to, how am I going to own today to make tomorrow better? And I think if we just make that one decision each day to hold ourselves to the standard that we want to live to, then I think everyone will end up on a much better trajectory. And it might not be tomorrow. It might not be next month. It might not even be next year. It might take a while.
Mm.
You might have to climb through a pretty deep valley of death, frankly. But that other side is worth it. And if you don't stop on 6, if you keep pushing to that 7th day when the walls come down,
Yes.
when you see true breakthrough, every day before that will feel infinitely worth it because you made it to where you're going. You held yourself to a standard. And now, frankly, you have the evidence for your self belief. Even though you had it before, you now have evidence to continue achieving bigger and better things. So thank you for that, Kings. That's for one, it means a lot that the book has resonated with you and I hope our goal was for the stories in the book to be able to meet people wherever they are, to meet the situation that they're in. And so I hope that one day you reopen the book and it speaks to the situation you find yourself. It speaks to the challenge that you're currently responding to in a unique way, in a way that allows you to, continue your permanent base camp, climb out of a valley if you happen to be in one, and attack the
Yes.
next peak.
I appreciate it. I know how it helped me. How can people get this in their hands? Like, where can they get it? How can they reach out to you? I know you have a couple of websites, so please share your contact information so they could get a copy of Bring Your Own Pencil so they could start rewriting their story or maybe even start writing their story.
Of course, yeah. So our website is bringyourownpencil.com. I will say we have a leadership library. If you if you have a hard copy of the book or even a digital copy, if you flip towards the back, there's a QR code. It links to our website, and it's every book that went into writing this, but also a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos, all kinds of articles. I mean, you can deep dive every single topic in the book, and we think it's and we continue to add to it. It's a living, breathing site, and so every time I find a great, inspiring video, we add it there, and so you can go to that leadership library and go as deep as you want on any of these topics, and that's completely free. And so that's bringyourownpencil.com, where you can get the book or see the leadership library. It's also on Amazon. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so if people want to connect with me, that's a great place to do it. And I look forward to connecting with people. The best thing for us is just hearing the stories of people that have read the book and it's made some sort of impact on them, whether it's one little story that spoke to them, whether it's one decision in life that they were able to make that went a little bit better because of one of the lessons in the book. That's really what gets us excited and makes us super super excited that we put the book out into the world, and hope that we continue to hear stories of people that have been impacted by it, because it impacts us every day. Like I said,
Yeah.
we wrote it for ourselves, and I continue to reference it myself on a daily basis.
No, I already told you, you already have one right here. like,
Well, thank you.
yeah, you already have one right here. So I like to thank you, and I like to thank all the listeners and the viewers and everybody that's popping in. Remember, you don't have to drown in the sea of transition. And what is that sea of transition? You could be transitioned from one day to the next, from one job to the next, from one room to the next. Everything is like you could transition everywhere is a transition, but you don't have to drown in the sea of it. Reach out, get a copy of Bring Your Own Pencil. You will get some nuggets in here. Because if I got some nuggets from this, and y'all already know how, I need to take pictures and stuff, so I go back and look at them. But if I got some nuggets from here, I guarantee you it's something in here for you. So reach out to Griff and his team. Go to the website, hit the QR code, and keep learning, keep growing. Until next time, everybody, take care. Peace.